the light goes right in your eyes. It takes about 2 minutes for me to actually think there's people out there. So move around or something. Tonight we have a lot on the agenda. We have a new board member to be sworn in. We had a resignation after the May election, the July annual meeting. We had the opportunity to meet 10 community members who submitted their resumes and qualifications. One was better than the next. It was great. We greatly appreciated the extent of participation. After a series of interviews over 2 different nights, the board, in a unanimous decision, selected Anne Marie Henninger, who will be sworn in by the district clerk tonight to serve through to May in the annual meeting. Madam Clerk, where is she?
She's down there.
Madam Clerk?
You got big notes.
Yes. Board member appointment. Resolve, the Board of Education hereby appoints Anne Marie Henninger to fill the board seat vacated by Michael Riggio until the next annual meeting scheduled for May 21st, 2019. May I have a second?
Second that.
Any comments? All in favor?
Okay, now you have to stand up.
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of board member according to the best of my ability.
We told Anne Marie outside, until she raises her hand, she could still run away. Thank you. Approval of the minutes. Pete?
Approval of the minutes resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of the Board of Education hereby accepts the minutes of the August 20th, 2018 special meeting and the August 22nd, 2018 regular meeting as submitted.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any comments? All in favor? Next will be Superintendent Gordon Brosdale's superintendent's report, and then we will go right into what is the bulk of our presentation tonight, the proposed bond projects. The intent behind this for the board was to get as much information out to the public as possible. Back to school nights, you saw a variety of placards, also known as exhibit boards, of different projects. We had the excellent opportunity of our board committee on this subject to give us advice. We wanted to show everyone everything we possibly had. We did it over the summer with website presentations and presentations in our meetings. We didn't have a lot of attendance. So while we may have had some views on Facebook, we really wanted to give everyone an opportunity to offer some comments to help guide us. The board has not made any decisions whatsoever. I will turn the program over to Gordon on his superintendent's report. Then I will offer some comments on the process, and then we'll have the bond presentation that will be given to us by the principals and directors, as well as Gordon, for all of our input. Thank you.
Will the board please join me below for my message and the bond presentation. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a great turnout. It's nice to see you. Say we're doing the bond every month. We have one of our usuals out here, but thanks for coming. I'm glad you care about this. It's extremely important. It's about the future of our district. And present tonight, I see a number of those people who are on the Community Bond Committee. Thank you for being here this evening. Every month, I'm reporting on the capital projects that are being done that the community approved last spring along with the budget vote. Just giving you updates. It's moving along quickly. And as I speak to my administrators around, some folks are confused and confuse the capital projects with the bond. There's some folks, even on staff, who say, isn't the bond going on now? Isn't the garden a result of the bond? The new field, the capital project? And then isn't the field a bond issue? So isn't the bond going on now? No. This is $5 million that was approved out of fund balance, no cost of community, to do the following projects that are almost all complete. If you haven't seen the turf field, you should. We had our first home game last Friday, and it looked amazing. You'd be extremely proud of it. And the old one's about 15 years old. We wouldn't know if it passed a concussion test every year. We worry. So it's been done. It came in ahead of time, ready for our first home game. The track, if the weather stays nice, might be completed by this week. We have to stay off it by next week, but that's coming along. The new bleachers, I think we're still getting prices on those, but they might happen by November, thereabouts. So all of that's coming along with the field and those other things that are associated with it. The roof completed also ahead of schedule. That was done last week. Now please understand that the money in the capital project paid for 1/3 of the high school roof. 1/3. If you were here last night for return to school night and saw the rain, you can imagine those parts of the building that weren't fixed. And they made themselves very apparent last night. Some of you may have been sitting in those classrooms. But again, the third that's in the capital project is fixed. The third part of that capital project was fencing, perimeter fencing. We're waiting for that to get started this week. Hopefully completion of the perimeter fencing will be the end of October. Now again, I've said this before, when we had security people give us a district assessment, one of the things, even before guards, they said the perimeter has to be tight, fences have to be secure, and we moved this up as a priority. Initially, these things were in the bond. The field was in the bond, security was in the bond. We had to take them out and put them in the capital projects because we needed these things now. So if it gets done, I like to show this picture because it has the guard booth, which was not part of the capital project. And it shows the pillar gates, stone pillar gates, which we'll have on North Country Road and 25A. And if you just look at this one picture, it changes the whole appearance of the entrance. Fencing was selected to suit the, let's say, history, the environment, the culture of the district. North Country Road will be decorative fencing to preserve that road line. And we're going to have the other fencing along 25A, which is in extreme need of repair. The guard booth was done out of existing funds, again, no cost to the community. That arrived early July, and thanks to Ken Jockers and his guys, that is wired for cameras, computer, and telephone, up and running when school started and our security guards returned. Our eventual plan is to have cameras, DVRs on those entering the district, face of the driver, and those departing from the district. I should mention with the booth, all of our staff now have identification cards. All of the staff will be tapping in. They don't have to do that. They can do it differently. but in the morning so we have thorough attendance throughout the buildings. And what will happen shortly is we have our scholarship machine, which is over there. That will be by the front door in the high school. Next step is for our high school, 9, 10, 11, 12, to also have school lanyards. They'll be different from this. It's a staff lanyard black. The rest of the students will have a red lanyard with black letters. And they will tap in the morning. They'll be by the front door. They can do 2 lines moving in. If they are suspended or not permitted in school, it will flash red. If you're in good standing, you'll get in with a green light. This is all brand new. This is all security. Mr. Gray will prepare a great letter that will be going home at the end of the week, early next week. The badges will be distributed, and we expect our students to wear them. Again, when our guards first came aboard, they said, how do we know who is an authorized adult in the building? No one has identification. Up to high school. How do I know all authorized students? How do I identify them? No idea. Well, now we do. All of the badges are color-coded according to which building you're in. The substitute gets a bright yellow badge. It looks like I said, thing 1, thing 2. But we can easily identify them, and coaches have a different color, so we're moving ahead there. We put a lot of security efforts in since last spring. Okay? So that's where we are. But scholarship, the student identification system will be installed. Everyone should be trained within the next few weeks at the high school, so you're going to be hearing a lot about that. Okay? So that's the update. The next one I make, I should be reporting that everything's been completed as far as the capital projects go. And the $5 million that you approved last May is now put into the works and happening in the district. But this is different now. Okay, that didn't cost. This is a bond that we've met for quite a long time about, but I'm going to let Bob introduce that. And again, I mentioned hello to a lot of the bond committee members that we're here tonight. And there's been a lot of thought and time put into this process, Bob.
Before we begin this evening with the presentation, and then more importantly, your opportunity to offer comment, the board intends to listen tonight. This will be our final opportunity really to listen and get as much information as possible. The bond committee worked tirelessly over months, culling through various projects that, if you picked up a sheet, would be the front page of this sheet. The back page represented some other projects, some of which we did put up on the placards that were out front as you came in. The intent behind this is to offer to the community as much information as possible so that you can offer us your comments, good, bad, or indifferent, so that we understand the most important piece of all of this is the needs of the students. The key word in that is need. I would dare say that every single one of these projects, and even projects that were eventually removed from the list, were all great ideas and wonderful. There's nothing on here that would be a bad idea. The question becomes need as balanced on a financial interest. So I thought I would introduce the program by defining what a bond is, what the process is, and what to expect going forward over the next couple of months. A bond is what a municipality, that's technically what we are, does to get permission to seek loans, to do projects. It has nothing to do with curriculum. It doesn't have to do with books. It doesn't have to do with all of the teaching that goes on. That is a completely separate money, and you can't use one for the other. Capital projects are what you do with a bond. A bond, if it is approved, is paid back through taxes. You are going to be taxed on a bond. You currently have a bond, by the way. That's what built this. There was a bond that built the high school, And next year, 1920, that loan will be paid off. So we had permission to float the loan, and it will be paid off next year. What's interesting about that, and a good example, is it costs us about $1 million a year to pay for the end of the loan. Of that, we receive more than $500,000 in aid. Some of the questions that people have asked that will come up, why do we bunch projects together? If you bunch a project together related to a specific building, the school, that becomes an aidable project, so that you may get up to 50, 60 cents on the dollar back, maybe even more, depending on the nature of the project. It doesn't come back tomorrow, but it comes back to us into our budget as aid. So when we are looking at extending a loan, we also have to think in terms of how do we bunch projects together so they make sense, they are limited in disruption, and that the school and therefore the community gets as much aid back from the state. The bond is not been decided upon. Even tonight, the board will listen. The intent and the steps that will be coming up next, this has been a long process, is tonight we spend time listening to the building principals, administrators on their position. You will all have an opportunity to chat with us. We're going to spend more time listening to what you have to say. October 10th, the board will have a workshop. You'll likely be here, where we will talk amongst ourselves publicly as to our position going forward for a vote or a resolution at the October meeting for a resolution to proceed ahead, yes or no, for the bond. There's a time frame after that resolution. I believe it's 45 days. Thereafter, there is a community vote on the bond, and that becomes really your choice with regards to that vote. The important thing to keep in mind tonight is when looking at this, like they did 25 or 27 years ago for the high school, when you're looking at this process, we have to look at not what we're going to do tomorrow, but what we will be providing for our students 10 and 15 and 20 years from now. Some of the placards have different items on them, none of which are important versus another, but they are examples to everyone so that we can see what options might lie ahead. STEM rooms, technology, things like that, that we would have to consider for the student, not this year, but the student 5 years from now and 10 years from now. What are the things that you will hear from our various speakers tonight? Projects, how it would be used, what it would do for the school and the students, cost, student population. That's a big issue. Goes to need. Those of you who have this year's kindergarten, it was 135 students. If you have children in the high school, you are generally in the ninth grade is the last of the 200 student classes. There was a time when we had 235, 240. The population of the students is dropping. It tends to be cyclical, but it has been holding steady relatively for the past few years and continues to drop. Gordon will go over the exact numbers. That has a factor in terms of how we are 5 years from now and what we have and what we will need then. I've used the word a number of times. The question becomes need and the balance with our financial position, because I said the word once. Everyone never wants to talk about taxes. A bond is paid by your taxes. I don't want to be unclear about that, because if we want to do everything, that will raise your taxes. That is in addition to your budget. The budget might raise your taxes too. That's a factor that everyone has to decide. I want to be transparent about that. Because what's the other thing that happened? Everybody know about SALT? And it's not Margaritaville. State and local taxes. Coming into April, you'll be sitting down and looking at your taxes and wondering where some of that went. We're facing that issue. That's an issue. That's the truth of the whole matter. That's why we've asked our administrators to come forward. They know how these buildings operate. They know what's going on. They know what they've put in between, how they've band-aided things. Our experts were really, though, the community members, 20-plus people who met multiple nights on this, really hashed out things. If you look at the front page, it's quite a very good job. They're going to they have given us their opinion, and we hold that in very high regard because it was a cross-section of the community. But we look forward to hearing from you tonight, and we look forward to this process and bringing it forward one way or the other. Thank you for your time. Gordon?
Thank you, Bob. At this time, to lead us off, I invite Mr. Kaplan to come up to talk about the items on the elementary school list.
I just want to come up so I can see it. Good evening, everybody. I think what Mr. Sweeney was saying about need is really how we focus in the elementary school. A lot of these things are what I would say brick and mortar, nuts and bolts. The PA and the master time clock system comes back to security. The public address system is outdated. We need one that's more accessible for multiple areas of the building. Door and hardware replacement. The new doors, as I'm sure you might have seen outside, have a safety advantage to them. Also, some of those doors are the original doors from, I believe, 1966 when the building was built. Additional security cameras. We have a lot of security cameras. The more the better. There's a couple blind spots. Some crack repairs, some windows, exterior doors, again, skylights, roofing replacements. We've had some leaks. If my secretary Karen is watching, she knows when it rains, sometimes it just comes right down on her desk. We need some roofing replacement. There's some heating issues, some ceilings in the kindergarten wing, some entrance renovations, providing the classroom ACs, revamping the ACs. If any of you drove by the first couple of weeks of school and heard a loud humming noise coming from the elementary school, that was an air conditioner that was quote unquote working, but needs to be replaced because it was loud. So I'm sure many of you heard that. There's things that I believe Mr. Sweeney just said, we've kind of band-aided, but are in need of just renovation and replacement. The student gang toilet upgrades just means that the student toilets, again, many of them are original, need to be replaced. Concrete sidewalk repairs, you may have seen outside, a lot of the sidewalk with cracks in it. And then the last four parts really have to do with, we took a walkthrough last year, and from a safety perspective, renovating the entranceway to make it safer, putting more security cameras, replacing those doors, and you'll see film, again, putting film over the glass to make it safer, God forbid, in case of an emergency where you want glass that'll stand up to things. And then additional scope, some of this list even predated me before I came in. It's my second year, and it was talking about replacing stage lighting. I chatted with Larry Roberts from the music department. We don't do a lot of stage shows at the elementary school, but I also think Mr. Sweeney was wise in saying, look 5-10 years down the road, what if we did? What if we decided to? And when I talked to Larry Roberts, I said, is that really necessary? The answer was no. We could still do shows even without the stage lighting. So we put that, fell under the additional scope. And that's really it at the elementary school.
Thanks, Rob.
No problem.
Pete, would you like to talk about the middle school, please?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out. I just want to take a minute and I want to congratulate Anne-Marie Henninger. She served on our site-based team at the middle school the last few years, and the board is really lucky to have her, so congratulations. Good luck. Thank you again. I'm a former history teacher, so just a little historical context of what kind of helped me to drive the decisions and the students that I met with and the staff that I met with in coming up with the list for the middle school. This really came about because of some of the security needs that, unfortunately, after things like Sandy Hook, we met with Suffolk County Police Department, police officers who came around our buildings and did a security assessment. The other piece of this is just things are old. The building was built in 1977, 78. The cornerstone says 78. I showed Mr. Van Middlem some of the pictures, and there's still the original yellow tile in the bathrooms of when the building was built. So you could do the math and kind of say to yourself, I would redo my own bathroom after 10 years, let alone a bathroom that services thousands upon thousands of students and staff every year. So that's why some of the things are in there. Also, in terms of historical context, giving you why I put some of the things on here are the vision for the school. I've been here now for 9 years, and the needs of students have changed. Students need more social emotional support. If you've been in the middle school, our support services are kind of spread out throughout the building. There's no one hub where a student can come to and seek out the nurse, the guidance counselor, the social worker, the psychologist, the administration. Right now, they're actually in all different parts of the building. The other piece, when the Suffolk County Police Department came around and said, it's kind of silly that you have people entering your building to come and meet with someone. There's no reason for that. So a big part of what they spoke about was centralizing that. So to just quickly go through the list, again, I just wanted to offer all that so you understand of why these things are on here from the middle school. You know, the public address system, the master time clock, it was our clock a few years ago. Mr. Sweeney used to joke that the time was 2 o'clock at the middle school. I think I got that one fixed for you though. We found one. But I had to take it out of the classroom. So there are clocks that just don't tell time. The PA system is the original again system. And in today's day and age of being able to get emergency, I brought an article that actually just came today from the New York State School Boards Association, and I'll leave it for anybody who wants to see it. 20 steps to better school security. And quite frankly, out of the 20 things, they're covered in this list, and I'm sure in some of my principal peers' lists. So things like having, and actually the quote here is to be able to hear a announcement in every cranny of the building, nook and cranny of the building. So right now that ability is not there. Additional security cameras, we have 4 external cameras, all in the front of the building, none in the back. The gymnasium flooring, if you've been in the middle school, we call it the old gym. I don't like using that because one day someone's going to call me old. Call it the main gym. There's actually a crown, the part that faces the exterior wall from old water damage that, again, is not really enough to say we need to replace it now in terms of health and safety, but it just has been, again, looked at as an issue. Our student lockers, I meet with the students and I ask them, what can I do to make you use your lockers more? And they go, stop them from jamming, put things that I could fit actual books in. If you've been in the 5th grade lockers upstairs, they're basically 7-inch lockers. Okay, we all know that things change with students, so the lockers have just been worn down. Our auditorium HVAC and auditorium lighting and ceiling, again, if you've been to the board meetings there or if you've been in the middle school, there's ceiling tiles that have fallen. The HVAC, Mr. Dushnik, has been officially condemned, from what I understand, correct? So, right now, that's not operational. Brings us to some of the things that then I looked at the vision of what students need. And with the STEAMS initiatives that we have, with science, technology, engineering, math, we have an area where the guidance office is that's right near the art rooms and the tech rooms. That would be a great area, again, if we were to centralize our student support services in one area, make it into a STEAM lab for students to create. STEAM is really meant to be what we want in terms of instruction, the way we want to go. We want students to be able to create without having a lot of boundaries and giving them the tools to do so. So taking the guidance office, and that was out in one of the renderings, which I think you guys did a great job of doing, Severio and Patty, of showing what it could be, is really important to the middle school philosophy. We've already started maker spaces in the library. We want to continue to grow that. And doing the addition and making a new library where the main office currently will allow us to now plan for that in the right way. Instead of just bringing in a folding table and putting Legos on it and saying, okay guys, go play. It's really having the vision to make something special for the community and for the students. So one of the things would be either to take just the STEAM lab and move guidance, which again, putting it to the front of the building, where sometimes the student confidentiality that could be compromised with people coming into the building. It'd probably be better served to move it into a central location where parents are coming into the main office rather than into the guidance office when they enter the building. Again, this is rendered outside if you want to take a look. Additional scope also, as I mentioned before, the bathrooms are in decent shape, but again, it's original equipment from when the school was built. I have the pictures to prove it if anybody wants to see it. And in terms of expanding and refurbishing the locker rooms, the toilets and storage. Currently in the boys' locker room, there's one stall and one urinal. We have 700 students in the school, 350 approximately are boys. One toilet, one urinal, again. So we're hoping to maybe expand that. Students right now leave their equipment in the old showers. I mean, I was an athlete in high school, I used to do that, you know. So again, what do we want for our children? What do we want for our middle schoolers? Whether you have a middle schooler, whether you're gonna have one, whether you had one. I think you can agree that storing equipment in an old shower is really not, you know, what we want our students to kind of experience. So that's why the expanded refurbished locker rooms were in there. Okay. Mr. President?
Thank you, Pete.
I'd be happy to expand on any of these things too, if anybody wants to give me a call and talk about it some more.
From the high school, Mr. Grable.
Good evening, folks, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to share what we feel the high school building needs. As Pete hinted, this is my 9th year in the high school, and when you spend that much time in one building, you get a pretty intimate understanding of what it needs. Whether you want to know that or not, because the people who occupy it are very good at telling you when they're hot, when they're cold, when they're wet, etc. So this list has been compiled to identify some of the things that we need here. So as Mr. Brosdale had explained earlier in the presentation, 1/3 of the high school roof has been replaced, the north side and a little bit coming this way. So the rest of the building is going to get a new roof as well. As most agree, when you have a flat roof, it's eventually going to leak. I remember when I was a kid and I ripped my jeans, my mother would iron a patch on there. Then I'd rip them again and she'd iron another patch, and then the first patch would come off. So we keep repairing our roof and these patches keep giving way. We had heavy rain last night, we had a leak down in the art room, we had a leak down in the 500 wing, most recently we had a leak in the library. So it's time to replace this roof so we're not just band-aiding it as we go. Okay? Masonry, pointing, crack repairs. If you take note, outside we have a low decorative slate wall. Some of the slates have fallen off. They need to be repaired. Just cosmetically, it just doesn't look nice when you're entering the building. Replace roll-type window shades, screens and shades. Currently, all the classrooms, let me backtrack. Prior to last year, the screens and shades were the original screens and shades. To be honest with you, most of them were missing because they had broken or ripped, okay? All the shades in the classrooms have been replaced. And they're necessary because the sun comes in the windows and kids have a glare on the smartboard and they really can't see it. Now we need to do the screens. And the screens are important because in the nice weather we like to open the windows. And we have kids who have bee and wasp allergies, and that's what comes in when there's no screens and we open the windows. So it's important that we replace those. ADA door and complete hardware upgrades. I don't know if you've noticed, but there is no handicap access to enter the building via a button. All doors need to be manually opened. So we need to make this ADA compliant at some points in the building. Additional security cameras. We too have blind spots. If you've been in this building and made your way back in the academic halls, there is a back stairwell that goes from one floor to the other. There are no cameras in that area. There are no cameras in this area. We need more cameras outside as well, just to surveil the building a little better. In the day and age of upgrading our security, this is something that we definitely need. Provide fresh air exchange, ceiling and exhaust fans in the gym. The air handle in the gymnasium is the original air handler. So when we turn it on, it sounds like there's a helicopter in the gym. One might say, well, what's the big deal with the noise in the gym? There's a lot of noise in the gym anyway. If we had a basketball game going on, there might be a foul shot. There's quiet times during athletic competitions. We also use the gymnasiums as mass testing areas. So when it's Regents exam time, and it's June, and it's hot, that's where we're testing. So we really need to get an air handle in there that would take the hot air out and bring some fresh air in. Replace the auditorium house lights, sound system, and controls. Right, you want to weigh in on that?
Sure, absolutely. So when I was first asked to investigate about the house lights and the sound system here, I went to many school districts to see what they had. And I have to tell you quite honestly, I knew what they had because I've been to many of them. And most auditoriums on Long Island, first of all, have been refurbished numerous times over 30 years. So the mere fact that this has not been in 30 years is concerning to me, only for it to be a useful facility. So what you find in the auditoriums in other school districts is that they have a control booth in the back, which we could easily install in the back. Probably have to take out maybe a portion of the last row, the second to last row to fit this in. And what you have on this control panel is that you have your sound system and you have your lighting system. Right now, if I had to make any changes with the sound system, I would have to leave the auditorium, go outside, go upstairs, and go up into the lighting booth, because that's what the controls are. So that really isn't conducive to having a fully operational and effective auditorium. I'm sure that most of you have seen the performances that are in here. I mean, we make it happen, but it's really difficult. And on top of that, for a building principal or for a guest speaker or someone coming in, everyone's scrambling to like, oh my God, is it going to work? And that's embarrassing because, you know, this represents the school district. So my proposal would be to install a new sound system, a new control booth in the back, and also, if we want to think even further, because now it's not really the 21st century, it's the 22nd century. Because we're talking about years. And what you should really have in here is a smart podium. And the middle school should have one also. And a smart podium is a podium that's up in the front, that has all the controls up front that are also housed in the back. And also it has controls to do your screen going up and down. It's very user-friendly, so even a principal can figure it out.
I don't know, it sounds pretty confusing.
But no, it's very, very simple. But it's establishing this and having the proper equipment. Plus the fact is that right now with the equipment that we have to hire a sound company to come in to do our shows. We have to also hire a lighting company to do our shows. They charge us a lot to rent their equipment. So that money that we spend year after year after year could be better spent buying the equipment now and put that into place. And then what you can do is you can call up a sound company or a lighting company and hire one of their technicians at like $40 an hour. So it's very cost effective over the years, and that's what you have to think about. You have to think about when you're spending all this money, the long term, and what's best for students. Plus the fact, Mr. Broswell, you can tell me when I'm going too long, right? I just got that off.
You can be young again. Excellent job.
Next,
What I'm saying.
are you done?
Go ahead.
Next on the list are the front doors. Those are the original front doors. You can imagine the traffic that's gone in and out of those doors over the past 30 years. As Ms. Salvati experienced on her way in today, the hydraulic systems that are supposed to control how slow the door closes behind you are wearing and breaking down. And sometimes those doors end up slamming. So, and not to mention the cosmetic appearance of those doors. They're all worn and paint's peeling. So we're recommending that we replace those doors. And the locking mechanisms tend to wear every so often. Complete the BMS installation. So that's a building management system. So basically, there is software and a computer that controls the HVA system in the high school. And you can set it to control temperatures in classrooms and in different areas of the building. That has not been updated since 2004, I believe, correct? What we've recently realized is while that needs to be repaired, everything past it also needs to be repaired. So Bob Dushnik has a very sound understanding of the guts and bolts beyond the HVA system. some of the headers, or what's the other word that lets the air in the ceiling? What are we talking about? What is it? Univents are wearing and breaking down and rotting out. You want to weigh in on that a little bit more technically, or is that about it? Yeah, okay. So while we are recommending that we replace this computer system that controls all of this, we're also suggesting strongly that we start considering taking a very, very close look at what's past it, because we're going to replace this to control it, and it's still not going to work as it's supposed to, because of the Band-Aids that have been in place over the years. Okay? Repave the main parking lot. If you've been in and out of the parking lot of the high school, you know there's a lot of cracks, there's some dips and valleys, there's some broken curves. It just needs a facelift. Okay? Parking lot and fencing enclosure by the cafeteria. I'm sure many of you have been visitors here during lunch periods. And when it's nice weather, we have kids that like to sit out by the picnic tables. Right now, when we have visitors come here, it's easy access to our kids. So we have pizza deliveries. We have graduates who come, just, they cell phone each other and say, hey, I'm in the neighborhood, we're going to come and visit. So prior to security, we'd be sitting in our office and watching all of this happening, and we'd have to go steal pizzas and put them in the main office and tell people they have to leave. Now security takes care of that. The major concern is that our visitors have easy access to our kids when they're out there. So we're suggesting that that area be fenced in. I think the rendering actually shows a brick wall that encloses that area. So they would be shielded from any visitors, and likewise, kids can't just meander to their cars and then come back without anybody knowing. So it keeps our kids where they're supposed to be and our visitors where they're supposed to be. Okay. Orchestra room.
I'm back. All right, I'm going to ask you to jump to the bottom of the page. And at the bottom of the page, it says Orchestra Room Edition. This is something the music department needs. Not wants, needs. And the reason being is that the current orchestra room that we have is not an orchestra room. It's a guidance office. And when the kids are in there rehearsing, during rehearsals, during the day, during class, and the orchestra room is filled with kids and their cases, and they're crammed in there, when I go in to observe, or if I just pop in to listen to them, this is me. A couple times I almost fell on a kid, because there was no room for me to move in there. Plus the fact, it just isn't conducive for creating music, the acoustics isn't there, and it's just not an orchestra room. But you know what? We've been using it for years. It's an orchestra room, okay. But however, I'm asked to check out about technology. Because this music department that is flourishing, that you've seen great concerts, there's no music technology. That's unheard of in today's day and age. So if we're again talking about the 22nd century, we have to really be thinking about installing technology currently in this high school, in this music department. Because I have letters from graduates that are currently studying music, and they wrote me great letters. I have them for the board. I'm not going to share them with you. And basically they said, you know what, we're at a disadvantage. Because when we went to audition for our music college, we were competing against kids from other high schools that had music theory in a computer lab. They had a digital recording studio to do their auditions. We don't have that. That's unheard of. And it really is disappointing to me. I love this place. I'm passionate about this place. The kids are great. The parents are great. The administrators are great. But we don't have the equipment to bring the kids up to the 21st, 22nd century. So in order for me to do that, the current guidance office, which is the orchestra room, that would be the new music MIDI lab, where I would have computers and I would have keyboards in there for the music theory classes. Plus the fact, we have students that are in the high school that don't do band, orchestra, and chorus. But they might do piano, they might do guitar. I would like to offer piano classes in this MIDI lab. So we're offering another outlet for students that aren't part of band, orchestra, and chorus that maybe want to do music. I'd like to have a guitar class, and those things would be housed, the guitar class would be housed in the orchestra room. We just don't have the space now for all the vision that I have for this great place. So I'm really hoping that the community would take into consideration building this orchestra room, because everything else will not happen. Plus the fact I offered to give up, because I'm thinking cost effectiveness, to give up my office, my secretary's office, and 2 bathrooms that are in my office area. And I said to Mr. Brosdale, I said, I don't need my office, and my secretary doesn't need her office. Don't tell her I said that. And the 2 bathrooms, so what? We can go somewhere else. And so I offered to transform those into a recording studio and 3 state-of-the-art practice rooms that these kids need. We don't have practice rooms. So here I am offering, thinking outside the box to save the district money. Let's just use our existing space. I'm trying to do my best not to spend money. But in order to have this music lab and the recording studio and everything, the new orchestra room has to be built.
You want to just do culinary right up there?
Sure. Culinary. So Mr. Brosdale hired me and he says, okay, he goes, I got some ideas and I need some help with that. I said, okay, what do you want to do? He goes, I want to improve the culinary program. I said, I'm all over that. I love to eat. And so at any rate, what I did was I created a college culinary class at the high school. This is the 2nd year that we have it. Very successful. I took the kids up to the Culinary Institute last year for a visit. The admissions office took them for a tour. And so it's really establishing the family consumer science onto the next level. So it's not just your basic baking class or whatever. My vision for next year is to introduce a college baking class. And in order for that to happen, to raise the level, again, you have to support the kids with the equipment and the space. The current family consumer science room in the high school is antiquated. It's mostly set up for, there's some cooking available, but there's a lot of sewing, and we're not doing sewing anymore. This is really a food base because of the trends that are going on in the professional world. So in order for us to have a really solid family consumer science program at that high level, we really need to reconfigure and rebuild that culinary room.
All set?
All set.
Science rooms. I'm sure some of you have been to back to school night and been in our science room, and they tend to be some of the smaller rooms in the buildings. And they're set up a little strangely. They're on angles. So we are recommending that all the science rooms be revamped. And Mr. Matthews will
Yeah,
weigh in
you
on
guys
that.
been in Mr. Cardo's room, just the room layout's totally weird, all the kids are cramped in one corner. So that room's gonna, if we can, get totally renovated and move the desks to the other side and the lab stations to the front side. Currently there's 7 rooms in the high school, and after 27 years of high school kids, they've kind of taken its toll on the rooms a little bit. The cabinets are in great shape. In each room there are 6 lab tables, which have little tiny sinks with gooseneck faucets, and there's 2 electrical receptors on top, and gas valves there, and those tend to get clogged a lot, the sinks, and we have leaks in the science rooms every year, a bunch, probably 5 or 6 leaks every year, leak down to the R rooms. So if we could, we're thinking about changing the layout of those lab tables, making them flat tops, we can put more stuff on them, putting electric drops in the ceiling. A lot of rooms don't need gas anymore, only the chemistry rooms use gas now, so we'll put gas only on the demonstration tables in the front, and I'm thinking about relocating the sinks to other areas where the kids don't have as much access to them all the time. So, and a lot of the emergency switches don't work in there either, the emergency shuttle switches. So,
Main lobby, storefront security access doors. In the interest of security, as you know, when you're a visitor here, you get buzzed in up in the security booth, and then you explain why you're here and what your business is, and then you're given a badge, and then you're off on your way. What we would like to do is put another set of doors down at this side, in the hallway here, like by the nurse's office, and put an aid there on the other side. So while what makes Mount Sinai special, you can have a sandwich from Northside delivered here and nobody's going to take it, you got to go up there and get it as a child, as a student here. We want to move all that stuff down here. So our kids don't have to mix with our visitors, and our visitors don't have to mix with our kids. So there would be another layer of security right down at this level to prevent our kids from having to go up to the security booth to get their stuff during the day. Main office, interior storefront, security access doors. As you all well know, the whole front panel here on the main office is glass. So when we do lockdown drills and we walk by, I can see every secretary that's there. So we're going to try to beef up the security around the main office area there. security film on the security booth out front, and security camera, student card readers, and intercoms. I've talked about the security cameras and some of the blind spots that we have. Student card readers, we anticipate going into action with that on October 8th, I believe. And the intercoms. So our PA system right now, when we have to do a lockdown drill or put the building in lockdown and lock out, it has to be done from the main office. That's the only way to communicate throughout the building. So I'm of the opinion that if a teacher's down in the 600 wing and that person deems, an incident's occurring where we need to do that they should be able to grab their phone and do it as well from there, rather than having to call the main office, tell me to do it, and then figure out what's going on. Likewise, when phys ed classes are outside or our tech classes are outside, there's no speakers outside for them to hear what's going on when we make announcements. It's important that they be able to hear directions when needed. Okay? So that's our initial list. Our secondary wish list we'll go through quickly, and Scott's going to talk about the gym floor.
Yeah, the gym floor in the high school hasn't been replaced. It's the original gym floor. And I believe, I want to say 20 years ago, when we used to host the proms in the school, there was a major water leak. So we've kind of piecemealed it a little bit, and it needs to be resurfaced, repainted, and totally redone. The high school. Anything else you want me to go through?
You go for your stuff, yeah.
One of the other things is our girls' softball field is currently behind the elementary school in the corner over by the post office. So we were looking to relocate that over by the turn here on North Country Road to make them feel part of the program. By doing so, the kids over here could just walk out, be a part of the program. It's dead space, and I think it would be a great venue for our female athletes in the school. On top of that, we were looking to do a multi-purpose practice facility, another turf field out on behind the bleachers. Right now, this is my 20th year here. 15 years ago, we put a turf field, the stadium field that we just redid, and it's been a great asset to our district. By providing another field, it gives us the opportunity to practice and compete against the neighboring schools. Right now, Rocky Point's putting in their third turf field. Ward Melville has a couple of them. Miller Place has a couple of them as well, and Shoreham just did one. So I think from an advantageous standpoint in terms of athletics, it definitely puts us up there with the rest. It gives us an opportunity to compete at the highest level, and it's a great area for our kids. Locker room expansion. Right now, we currently have 2 locker rooms in the high school. We have one that is a phys ed locker room, where the lockers are about 11 by 11 by 11. You can't even fit a shoe in it. So what we want to do is take that locker room and our team locker room that doesn't really house all of our athletes, knock down the wall, expand that locker room so that every student athlete gets a bigger locker. Okay, because right now they have a phys ed locker, and then they have a team locker after school, and they're not sufficient. Within those locker rooms as well, I believe in the new locker room, that's a team room, there's no stalls, there's only 3 urinals. So the kids have to leave the team locker room to go into the phys ed locker room to go to the bathroom, and vice versa, to go back and forth, where they're leaving one area to go to another area.
Might as well address those up. Athletics grounds.
What?
Athletics grounds.
Oh, the bottom?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
The phone system.
You'll have very close like that. The other thing is the 2 things was if we were to move or not move the softball field, we were looking to do it in AstroTurf as well as the baseball field. Right now, most of our fields, if you come out right out of the high school right now, our baseball field is used as a baseball field, as a football field, practice field, and for our phys ed classes. So if we could, we were looking to use synthetic turf so that we can use it for all of our student athletes, and it would save on wear and tear as well. And last but not least is our gymnasium. We were looking to, years ago when we moved our tennis courts to the middle school, we have open space on our tennis courts at the high school. With that being said, we have a facility right now that houses our basketball team, our cheerleading team. I think we have up to 55 teams through 7th through 12th grade. And in the wintertime, we have 11 teams that are using our gym. And we don't have the space
nor the facility to house those kids. So practice, for instance, goes from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 11 o'clock at night. By adding another gym would give us the opportunity to get everyone to practice at once. Our cheerleaders behind the in the elementary school, the middle school, we have teams all over the place, and it would be just a great asset to add a gymnasium to the high school.
Can we go back to my slide?
To what?
The rest of the slide. All right, just to touch upon some of the items that were left over before Scott started talking about athletics. I talked about the PA system and the master time clock system. As Bob pointed out, it's 2 o'clock in here right now. Some of our clocks in the classrooms are wrong, and our clocks don't align with our bell system as the bell system starts to lag. So we'd like to upgrade that as well. Replace auditorium seating. While on the surface, every so often we get a tear and we replace it. But on the surface, this looks real pretty and kept. But what's happening is underneath these seats are metal pieces that start to rot out. And these are so old that we can't get the parts to fix them. So the plan was to replace all of these seats. You have anything to add to that, Ryan?
Yeah, no, basically that Abel had told us that when he had to repair them, he noticed that they're deteriorating inside. So, because when you look at it, it doesn't seem like they have to be replaced, but they do.
Student gang toilets. So we have 3 student bathrooms in the main hallway, and we have 4 faculty bathrooms in the building. These are the original bathrooms. So as you can surmise, we've been putting coats and coats of paint every summer just to make them nice. And I would be remiss if I didn't start thinking the future about gender-free bathrooms. You know, that's a population of students that we can't ignore and have to accommodate. So in thinking that way, I would suggest at some point we start thinking about abandoning urinals and putting extra toilets with partitions in to accommodate a gender-free type of environment for those who request it. LED parking lot lighting. We need additional lighting in the parking lot. There's some dark spots out there, and it's just not a safe environment for visitors in the evening. Is there anything more to that?
We're actually redoing them now. We got a rebate to do all the lights outside, but we do need additional stands to add more lighting.
Training room renovations is yours.
Oh, the training room right now, we have a training room where our athletic trainer is with no ice machine or no water. So a lot of the kids that are coming in with injuries and whatnot cannot wash off, or it's not a sufficient area. But we do have a lot of student athletes here that go around with our trainer and use that as something that they want to do in college. So it's just not a sufficient area. It's just an old closet with a couple of taping areas. We want to add an ice machine and, like I said, an area where they can get inside and outside access from the gymnasium and the fields.
Woodshop ventilation dust collection system. It's the original dust collecting system in the high school here. So when they're cutting wood and sawdust is in the room, it's supposed to suck it out and take it out of the room and make big piles of it in this machine outside, just outside the room. The middle schools has been replaced. Ours has not been replaced. So we're looking to replace the ventilation system. In the prep room, heating and cooling, our science classrooms are separated by prep rooms, and the heating and cooling systems in those prep rooms is just subpar. So when it's cold, you know, they're cold. When it's hot, they're hot. Okay? And the last is the orchestra room addition.
Did it.
Did it. Done. The next time Mr. Roberts speaks, we'll hand out popcorn. We good?
Yeah, just the fitness. I don't want to go about that.
No, you good.
The other thing is by moving the gymnasium and adding a gymnasium, right now currently we have a tiny room for a weight room, no aerobic or cardio equipment in it. So by moving the gymnasium or adding a gymnasium, we want to take the wrestling room. The new gymnasium would house cheerleading, a wrestling room, and a gymnasium. The current weight room that we have right now is tiny. It would probably only hold about 20 kids. What we would do is knock down the wall and take half of it, which is our temporarily our wrestling room, and make one big wrestling room and/or weight room, and add cardio equipment and aerobic equipment as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rob, gentlemen. This slide, Bob Sweeney mentioned a moment ago. 5 years is rather small, you can't read it. Our current population, those who are students attending the district, currently, I thank Linda for this information, 2,254 students are attending our schools now. Within 5 years, And I asked the gentleman when I met with him yesterday, when's the last time you saw less than 2,000 students here? And they didn't remember. But in 5 years, we look at a population of 990 students. That's a decrease roughly of 260 students in 5 years. If I didn't tell you that, Monica would email me tonight and ask me what's our population in 5 years. So I'm telling her. Those are facts. As Bob said, you want to be as transparent as possible. You have to make important decisions. That population is important to note. Now, Bob also mentioned the bond and the budget. The budget that we start presenting January through May is one thing on your taxes. This bond is another item in addition. What it costs, is I presented this last June and July. If your house is assessed at $3,700, additional taxes per year over the regular school tax increase is $235. So you could say, no one in the world has that assessment. Mine's more. Well, a $5,700 assessment is $362 additional taxes per year. If you're in between those two figures, you could figure roughly where you are. So the thing you're seeing on the front of the sheet is the $24.7 million budget. All the additional stuff, in fact, is additional. So if you're in your head, you're figuring, I like this group of things, and it's about $1 million. So over that 24.7, if I get my package for $1 million, that translates to $9.50 more, $9.50 more per year on your amount. If you're adding a bundle of $5 million, it's $48 per year for $5 million increase. Now, what was just presented, the gentleman, I thank him so much for that presentation. On the front of the sheet, all those items, and the items Rob spoke about, $4 million, 4.4 in the elementary school, 7.5 in the middle, and what Rob just spoke about, and Scott, that's 7.3. The high school district-wide athletics and grounds 5. That's why you have 24.7, the initial budget. That's how it's divided up. Now, extra things. And I'm sure we'll be taking questions you're going to ask about this, but quickly, if you can see that screen and you have some things in mind that the gentleman talked about, you'll see they're broken down into cost additional over what your initial fee tax increase would be. For example, Pete spoke about the library configuration, office or guidance configuration change is $2.4 million. What does that translate to you if you like that? $23.50 in addition to what your house is assessed. Scott just spoke about the gym flooring. What would that cost? The cost to fix it is $262,000. What does it translate to? $2.49 additional. The gentleman just spoke about replacing his auditorium seats, which are rotting inside. The metal is rusting. That's $2.67 because it costs $281.08 to replace them. Talked about the toilet, so you can see them from where you are, and I'm going to cover most of the training room renovation. Scott spoke about it. That's the cost. The addition on your taxes on the right. Ventilation, Larry's baby, orchestra room addition. That's $2 million. Now remember, that's a structure that's brick and mortar out that way. It's $2 million. You want that? It's $2.18. On top of, $19.52 for that. Well, I want the auditorium and I want the music lab convert the present orchestra classroom. Well, that's another $2.18. So you see how that works in addition to what I showed you initially. We didn't talk about the garage, that additional. Additional synthetic turf field, $1.6 million. You feel we need those things, we want those additional fields. That one field is $15.25 on top of the initial amount. The synthetic girls softball field, $655,000 to build, $622. And the baseball team, their field to convert from grass to turf will be another $747. And the big item, if you want the additional gym, with more room for a wrestling room, team room, weight room. 12,500 square feet. That's an $8 million project. That will add almost $78 on the initial increase in your taxes. Okay, so those additional items, what they'll cost in addition on top of the other items. Now, again, to be transparent, the good news from Mount Sinai is that, and thank you, Severi, for this information, all of these things in the bond, 85% of them are aidable. 85% of those projects are aidable from the state. So what we're entitled to in Mount Sinai is 78% aid in Mount Sinai on these projects. So if 85 are aidable, we get 78%. What does that translate to? The state reimburses us for 66% of that 24.7 million. And I'm talking about right now, unless there are questions. So Bob, do you want to put an end on, wrap it up for questions?
Thank you. As I said in the beginning, we wanted to cover not only what the months of work that the bond committee did, that's on your first page, the $24 million worth of work. We wanted to be able to cover what the cost was. You should be able to leave this meeting and not only yourselves, but maybe talk to your neighbors about the effect that this will have one way or the other. How this will affect your taxes. It's important that you have an honest outline of what that is and what is a need versus what is a wish or a want. There's a lot of things that I wish for. I gave up wishing for dark hair again. That's over. We have to look at what the needs are, because that's what the responsibility of the board is, to weigh this, and that's what we'll be doing coming into October and making that decision. That's why this meeting is so important. Keep in mind one thing, that in this list, this is a very useful list. We also, in July, voted on moving $750,000 of money from our fund balance into a capital reserve fund. That there are items that maybe you've heard repair, renovate, that we may look at some of these items and say, that is more of a repair item that we can do over time rather than take a loan. That's what's going on right now. I always believe in my own household. If I can pay for it, why should I put it on a credit card? Why should I take a loan for it? Because as you're seeing, we're paying interest on that loan. We may have a very good financial rating, it's still interest. They're not giving us a 0% loan. And that's something to take into account at a balance, because we don't want to take away from program to pay for something that might be more suited for a bond and a long-term loan that we pay over time. Either or, the work that's being done presently is aidable. So we don't lose the aid. It's just a question of what should we be doing over time, because the bond, assuming it is agreeable, is not automatic, and all these things aren't going to happen all at once. So we will look at some of these items as the bond goes through it to say, would there be things that we should do or save up for or work towards in paying for through our capital reserve fund. Any business, at least as I see it, should prepare for down the road when the water heater breaks or when the roof goes. Every flat roof is just when it will leak. Think of it as a pool that is not full. That's what they are. So those are things we should prepare for ahead of time. As you're looking at this, we will be looking at it as well. We'll take your input together. We will, as a board, reconvene on the, I believe the October 10th and have a final discussion with the input that we've received tonight, your input, and make a decision going forward. Thank you, gentlemen, for all your help, your time. I see some of the members of the bond committee. I'm not going to ask them to stand, but they spent many a night up in the library going through this, and they really got us to this point. We sort of got a little off track. My job is to bring it on track for a decision. Thank you very much. You can stand down here and ask questions. If you're going, we'll go up and sit up there so we're out of the way. If you wouldn't mind, come up to the mic. The acoustics are
One on each side.
iffy. And feel free to, if you have a question, if you have an opinion, we're happy to hear it. This is a great time to do it, and we would like you to do that.
Could we start our questions?
Yeah, we're wondering where the light switch is in this. Step, we're getting a few of the papers here. If you have questions, there's room to sit up here if you want to sort of stage yourself up, or just offer comment, and just tell me your name, and we'll start right here.
Name's Anthony D. Paola. I thought you guys did a great job. I'm going to just hold this because it's a little low. My concerns are, I didn't know how bad our roofs were. Some of the, both in the elementary, the middle school, and the high school. I think that's something we need to fix immediately. My concerns with that is lawsuits, kids fall, slip. I think that presents other problems. What I did not know as far as with the expansion and the size of the classes getting smaller, I think we need to focus on the immediate things, the necessity items. Maybe we can do it, as Bob mentioned, every year out of our reserves to fix those things as we go along, because they need to be addressed. The bond is a concern for me as somebody that pays over $23,000 a year in taxes now. There's people in here that pay more than I do. So I really don't want to take another loan or a bond and pay interest on that bond over 20 years. But I'm open to looking at different ways we can help solve some of these problems. But the immediate is, I didn't know how bad some of these schools were. We need to fix the roofs. We need to fix the leaks. I know games have been canceled because of that. So we need to set that up as soon as possible. So that's something that I'm very concerned about, because I think it opens up for lawsuits as well. What's your thoughts about that?
It's very difficult to disagree with that. I mean, the reality of it is we have to do certain repairs. One of the reasons we set up a capital reserve is this is what should be done when we're running a building. The facilities management that needs to be done. Maintenance over time ends up being cheaper than replacement. Over time, you do have to replace things. This is the balance that the bond committee wrestled with and came up with their suggestion. This then will be the board's decision to weigh that in terms of what needs to be done immediately, what should be done by way of a long-term expenditure, and what should be done as a repair over the next few years in a strategic way.
Thanks. And it's frustrating when I hear Rocky Point and Wading River have more facilities than we do, based on the taxes we pay in Mount Sinai. So maybe we can help allocate. I think our budget's about $61 million a year. Is that about accurate now?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, we can look at somewhere that money's going and reallocate it, or use some of those funds. I don't know what we have left over on a yearly basis after we pay our taxes. What is the additional monies left after that every year when we pay our taxes and we have the money left over as far as reserves?
This is the difficulty of a school budget. We are an expenditure budget, not like a business that I might run or you might run. We have to estimate our budget. We have, over the last couple of years, received monies due us from the state in aid that had been held in gap elimination and different things like that. You authorized in a vote, you being the community, to expend that money for capital projects that are currently going on. They've lumped a variety of things together. You see some paving being done, you see some fencing being done. A good example would be if we put up new fencing along the eastern boundary of the property alone, it might not be as aidable level as if we do it with the building and other projects. So yes, we should look at how can we do projects that can be done through our expenditure budget, and then how can we do projects that are much larger, that are required through a reasonable and financially sound loan, and what is need versus what is it a want.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can't be the only question. You can come on. This is why we're having this.
All right.
And the mics are actually pretty good, so you don't have to, they'll pick up your voice.
That's why I lowered it, because the gentleman's tall and I
Yeah.
was right into it. My name is Michael DeMarco. I had a question in regards to the old bond versus the new bond. The old bond expires
Next year.
next year, so this bond would be taking its place pretty much. Or
Not
or
really.
an extension of it, or, let's put it this way, you'll get a savings from that bond, correct?
No,
No?
no.
Why would we get a
Why you
savings?
won't get a savings is because we'll see some reduction in our expense. This is something to keep in mind, because we have to look at when the bond comes off, we're gonna finish the payment, it's $1 million.
Correct.
We also lose that aid. So there's $500,000 lost in aid. We have $500,000, I'm rounding up, $500,000. In our budget, we may find that money that would be in an expenditure budget, we're not saving that money, but it will go towards other things within our operation. It depends, we're really talking about two different terms. That $500,000 could go for repairs, as this gentleman has suggested, renovations, or it will cover what our expenses as they go up. Our budget keeps going up, so it's not a like-kind dollar for dollar.
So you're not planning on using that revenue, yeah, it's actually a revenue. You're not taking that revenue and paying, or gonna put it towards this bond. We're just gonna spend that or save it somewhere else, and this is just gonna be a new one.
Well, we may, they're two different pots, but we may use that $500,000, it's not revenue. We will use that money, if it is smart, to pay for a repair.
Okay. Be exactly. if you
Reduce
had-
the bond, but-
Well, if you had a car lease, and you paid $500 a month with a car lease, or we'll make it simple, a year, and that lease came due, and then you bought another car, you're taking the $500 and saying, putting it in a general account, and we're gonna take another $500 and pay towards, so we're gonna increase by $500 our expenditures.
That's your terms, not mine. What I said was, our expenses by next year will increase. That will go towards our expenses, or we may use that money that's not spent on the high school bond, that will go towards, do we put that into the reserve, the capital reserve, to pay for some of the repairs that are necessary? You're describing it as such that that's an automatic savings, because we're not gonna pay that anymore. And that if we don't use it that way, we're keeping the money in our reserve, that was your term, which is not correct.
Correct.
And we're spending $500.
Correct. Because it wasn't planned for anything else other than that bond until this point. So you answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my question goes to, I'm a little bit confused about the per household tax and whether that's before aid or after. And what on that list of both suggested for bond versus additional would be aidable?
Everything is aidable.
The whole entire list?
It is, as long as you, 85% we get is aidable. Of that 66, up to 66%, and usually we're pretty good, but we get 66% back. The list there, You would not do something that you would not put together in a group of projects that would make it unaidable. An unaidable project would be completely separate, not connected, you have to connect it to the building.
Just an example of the way state aid works with that. But a perfect example is a parking lot. A parking lot does not add to the program or educational value for a student. So a parking lot in and of itself is not an aidable product. However, if you do a parking lot and in addition to the school at the same time that's getting classroom space, your parking lot project now becomes aidable within the whole scheme of things. So it takes a project that would be a loss leader for us and helps us bundle it in with the state aid and therefore make it a less cost value for the
So
district.
100% of the list was aidable. Was that increase in taxes per household, pre-aid or pre? So the aid would reduce, the aid we receive from the state would
The way it
reduce-
works is, that was the first half of your question, I answered the back half. The first half of your question is, we pay our taxes. The aid does not come in the like kind as our tax dollar goes out. We have to pay the full amount, the $234 per assessed value of $3,700, and we will receive aidable money back over 15 years. So it's the way to think about it, like, you know, when you take your pre-tax deductions, things like this, you're paying that out of your pocket. It's not going to be $234 minus 66% or 34% based on that. It will be $237 will be added to your tax. Okay.
Hi, how are you? John Horvath. First of all, thank you guys for all the hard work that went into that presentation. It was great. So just a follow-up question to that. Will that aid in the following year start to apply towards future budget increases, and is it allocated or accounted for in future budget considerations?
Correct. So what happens is, as we get money back, that was what I was explaining to the gentleman, as we get money in aid, that goes towards the budget. And that would either reduce or slow the increase in our budget. We get the money, but it would be misleading to you to tell you the 200, I'm using the 234 because that was on the slide. It would be misleading to tell you, take that and divide it by 34%. That's not how it works. The state gives us that money back over 15 years. Think of it as it goes towards your budget expenditure total.
Right. Okay.
Of which the bond payment is a piece.
Thank you. And so you know, talking about planning for the future for, 22nd century here, can you give a little more background around how much of the bond's approved for $25 million or plus or minus? How much of that's being spent year 1, year 5, year 10? And just for clarification, like how does the bond work? Do you have to take it out $25 million to your point and put it, start paying interest day one? If we're only spending 10% of that money in the first 5 years.
The bond works, you may take loans for what you need.
Okay.
It's not, I'll use this as an example, it's not exactly this way. A home equity loan. You take out a home equity loan, you're approved for that amount of money, and you draw down $20,000 of the $100,000. That's a simplistic way to look at it. It's not exactly that way. It's pretty close. The purpose of the bond, if you look at many of these items need to be projects that will be occurring over the next couple to 3 years, relatively soon, not necessarily 10 years from now. The goal is to move forward on many of these items that need to be addressed in a succession that, one, does not hugely disrupt the classroom, but also moves it along with some degree of alacrity. The process that we've gone through over the past 2 years has had a degree of inertia that needs to get to a decision, and that's the same issue with regards to the project. Part of the cost factor in here that is not a specific item, but is accommodated in a number of the projects, includes the cost of a project manager that works for the district, not an employee, but that works for the district, that moves these projects along with a degree of timeliness to get finished.
Thank you, that's helpful. Last question, I promise. So, first time going through this, I have to ask a question. I mean, are those final cost estimates and we already went through a bid process, or is that a next stage to go through like a, an RFP with, multiple contractors, et cetera?
Our architect, who is seated here, Mr. Dario, has given us estimates. These are not bids. That would be the next process. Now, the sooner, to answer sort of your second question again, the sooner we move on some of these projects, the more reasonable the price will be, because every year the price goes up. So there's another impetus to us to move along with these projects, because 3 years from now will cost more than 2 years. But the items, the estimates that are presented are estimates based on the architect's good knowledge and what has been his experience. After the bond is approved, we would have to go out for bid. Any other questions? All right.
Does this one work?
Oh, sure, come on. This one works, and we'll help my neck looking over this way.
My name is Jeanette DiPaola, and the one thing I noticed in the presentation was that the multi-purpose additional turf field was listed in the upper section of the 25 million and the additional scope as well. Is it additional scope, or is it included in the must-haves?
The turf field? Provide one synthetic turf multi-purpose field high school is on the additional scope.
I think I saw it up above also.
And provide one synthetic turf multi-purpose field high school. Scott?
Yeah, the reason was that they wanted, if we tied the two in together, it would have been a lot cheaper, because they would only have to do the drainage once in one location.
So you want 2 turf fields, is that true? Or?
We only want, we put it in because we were gonna eventually we were gonna put one at the middle school when you come in. But the problem was that we wanted the two together, so like I said, it was cheaper with the underground system being in one location. So I think the board put one through on the actual to get it done, and then the next one would be optional.
For there are 2 proposals. It sounds like there are 2 separate fields. The board has not accepted either one as a final decision.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm not sure, I don't know how everybody else feels, but you might want to move that one to, if it's $1.6 million, that's a huge amount. When we already have a great turf field, it just doesn't sound like a must-have to me compared to the other things that need to get done. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you.
How you doing? Steve Brucci. I really wasn't going to get up here and ask a few questions. I was listening, but after hearing some things, there's a few questions I have and comments I'd like to make. Regarding the new sports complex or fields, and I noticed it's all lumped together. Is that going to stay that way, or is there a possibility that some of that gets done, some doesn't, some does and some doesn't, like the fields?
Yes, the list, that the way it's presented has nothing to do with yes or no.
And, the reason I bring this up is because from an athletic standpoint, the baseball field's a disaster with middle school and high school. It's probably one of our more popular sports, actually, if you really look at who goes out for it and how many kids do it. If anyone's noticed, it seems like every year the spring is colder. It starts later, but the sport doesn't. Okay, I can tell you, my son was out on practice fields in 28-degree weather. All right, and it's an ice skating rink. All right, and they miss games and miss practices. You have a football field that's turf. You have a great idea doing baseball and softball fields and turf. I would think over time it would save you money in maintenance. It's also going to get the games in. There's a lot of importance to that. And I know some people don't want to hear it, but the reality is it's actually safer. Because if you've ever played baseball and had a dig in front of you where a kid twists an ankle in the outfield because there's ruts, because there was a football practice going, it's dangerous. So there's a lot of reasons for it. I think it makes a lot of sense, but the question is, does it have to be tied to an $8 million facility and so forth?
No.
Okay, so, I mean, but for student safety, athlete safety, it's a great idea. I mean, it's a true hop on the field, less injuries, you don't have to deal with frozen ground at practice in the spring. There's all these, and you can get all your games in, because really, unless it's lightning, you can play. So there's a lot of reasons for that. The second question I had really went back to the budget, and I'm glad you did mention it before, you kind of cleared it up for me. It's not that you take $24 million in the bond and you have to take all $24 million. So you pick and choose, you use what you need, and then you're just paying on that portion. And that's it. And so that's a reality. Now the second, on top of that, I have another
If I
question.
might just, if I could address that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an administrator, I'm not part of bureaucracy, I own my own business. I become wary, and I'm just offering this as a comment. If we get asked for $24 million, I just want to offer a caution. There is a tendency to use all 24.
I understand.
And that's why at this point we have to be careful with what we authorize for use. Because I find people like to spend the whole amount. Nobody calls me and says, oh, I saved you money. I didn't use all. I'll just offer that as my own personal comment.
Not revenue based, I get it. Lost my train of thought on the last question.
Sorry.
What's the last question? Actually, I don't remember it now, so.
You can
lost
come
my
back.
train of thought. All right.
That was my fault, I apologize.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
You know who I am. Brad Arrington. Just a couple thoughts, not really questions. Listening to all the different projects, there's a lot of different things around the campus that are just old and falling apart, the seats, the air conditioning, that kind of thing. So my thought process is get those things done first, get the necessities taken care of first to make sure that we can maintain the facilities and that's taken care of. The kids are safe. They're not sweating in the middle school because the air conditioning is broken, those kinds of things. Second would be, I would ask that we try to take a balanced approach to the different projects that are being thought about. There's a lot of kids and families that are dedicated to sports. There's a lot of families that are dedicated to the arts, and everybody has their own thing that they want. My kids do a lot of those things, so I kind of have fingers in a lot of different activities. But try to meet the needs of as many different groups of students as possible. My last thought is that, you know, we all go to different school districts for different activities. My son does baseball practice for a team over in Miller Place. It's wonderful to play on a turf field there versus a dirt field of North Shore. You know, it's fantastic. But looking at the different school districts, it can be pretty easy to feel envious of what other districts have. You know, maybe they have a better softball field or a better orchestra room or something like that. I think we need to make sure we focus on what we have, what we need, and what we can reasonably afford in a responsible way, and not just try to be as good or as better than the other districts that are near us.
Thank you very much. Very well said. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Ritchie, did you remember?
I guess one of the things I was trying to get at before, I lost train of thought, but
How fast would, say, turf fields be installed if it was approved to be done.
That's a little above my pay grade.
Well, the reason I ask, and I'm just
yes.
going to point this out here, I've been living in Mount Sinai since 2005. My kids have gone through school here completely. I have a daughter in 11th grade, a son in 9th grade. My son was in 2nd grade, they approved full-day kindergarten, so we completely missed on that. I'm just a little tired of getting just missing things, okay?
Yeah.
So if I'm gonna say yes to this, and I probably got another 15 years in the district, but kids that'll be out of here in 2 to 4, I'd like to know I'm gonna get my bang for the buck, frankly. Because even though I know it's great for the house values, if everything's done nice, believe me, it's a big deal, I get it. But it would be nice for me to have my own kids reap a little bit of this. So that's why I'm asking the question on the fields. Because that to me is, right now, kind of important. So
We have moved with a great deal of speed with the existing field, but all of the drainage, and pretty much it was a renovation, not an install. I've heard varying figures. I might ask Severio, do you have an opinion on time frame?
Well, I think typically based upon the projects that we outlined, regardless of what the overall end number is. If you look to say the 24 million, we would estimate about 4 to 5 years of construction time. And that's because some projects can't be done during the school year because of the disruption that they would have to the students. So some projects can only be done during the summer. You also have to look at, there is time associated with designing the project, submitting it to the state education department, receiving a permit from the state education department, going out to bid for that project, and then ultimately awarding and starting the construction of that project. That time frame, depending on where S&D is, could take 6 months for that duration. So there's at least 6 or so months of design and permitting before you can even get to a construction.
6 months to a year before you can even think about it.
Right, and then you'd like to group projects so that you maximize building. So if a field is one of the projects that you'd like to see done first, or the community feels that's a necessity that they'd like to that they would like to see done first, you'd want to group that with a project that involves an improvement, a capital improvement to the building to maximize building needs. So that project may take the full duration at S&D to receive the permit. So I would think you would not see, if a successful bond was passed, I think you would not see something until the following summer or into that fall of actual construction starting, and then you would prioritize those projects.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Hello, I'm Justin Hertz, and I just had a couple of questions for you, or comments. So, when my wife and I bought our house here 10 or 11 years ago, we picked Mount Sinai because we felt that it was a great school district, had a good reputation, the grounds were beautiful, and hearing all the different things that are on there, some being sport-related, some classroom-related, some music-related, I feel as though all the different areas are being touched with this bond proposal. So what I would hate to see is that you cut things out of it, and then in 10 years we say, we should have put that in the bond, because now we are behind, these other districts. So when we picked a house, we didn't pick one in Miller Place, we didn't pick one in Rocky Point, we picked one in Mount Sinai. I'm sure many people are in the same boat. On my end, one of the questions I'd like to see answered is, once you guys put together a list, will you have a dollar amount that if the bond is approved, this is what it will cost per household? And when do you think that would happen?
Yes, I get your question. You're saying if there's let me take a step back. The bond committee has made a recommendation, and that reflects a pretty significant study over time, and that's the 24 million and change. That is what reflects the $237 for a 3,700 assessment or the larger assessment. If we were to, quote unquote, eliminate, well, we may, but we have to respect the work that the committee did. It is our decision eventually. If we were to look at items though and say, we have the funds presently that we should immediately replace the HVA system in the middle school, which is in the 24 million, we might want to do that immediately. It comes out of the capital project. That would reduce the cost overall of the bond. So there are some things that we may want to do immediately that I would say fall into the category of a repair, assuming that that is a smart allocation of our monies. If we were to add to what the committee has suggested, we'll discuss that on the 10th, but there would be a final number of, this is what it's going to cost. There is a slide that Gordon put up that I thought was great. It tells you by how you add to the amount. If you add $1 million, this is what the addition, I think, was $9. If you add $2 million, it might not be exactly $18, but that's how it will go up.
And one more question, the additional scope that all the principals went over for their building, that's, I'm guessing, a wish list, right? So are those things, if there was extra money that they look into, or that would all be figured out before the bond?
The interesting thing about a bond is we would define the scope, and it is relatively general in capital projects, repairs. We don't have to say, as we've done in this, this is not what a bond looks like. This is for the community to know what the items are. But say, for example, through the process, we were able to save, based on repairs and other items, $1 million. We're not restricted from directing that towards other things.
Okay.
They have to be capital projects. But we also have to be careful with, that was my comment before, there is a tendency to do that. It has to be for the right thing. When we've all been through this, the committee has gone through tours, one of the statements that was made up front was, when we are looking at items, particularly the items in the $24 million status, was what will we be doing for the students who are going into 9th grade 9 years from now? That's the way we have to think a little bit. What are we doing in the classroom, whether it's a music classroom, science classroom, a gym, a weight room, or a field, or a cafeteria? What will it look like for them? And that is probably the hardest part of what the bond committee did to try to look into the future.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, Michael. The question is when we're doing work outside of the bond, do we get the state aid for that? So we did the football field, we did the track and so forth. Did we get the state?
Yes. The bond has no bearing one way or the other.
So you can do the process quicker if we take it out of reserves than if we go through the bond?
Depends on the project.
Okay. So
you still have to go through state aid. If it is a brick and mortar project that we were to pay for out of our fund balance, out of capital reserve, you may have permitting requirements, you may have other requirements that you have to go through that would be the same as whether you had a bond or otherwise. The bond has no effect on the timing.
Okay.
I use the middle school HVAC. We would still have to get some permissions. Sometimes it's shorter, depends on what your application is.
Renovation versus something there.
Correct. But the bond has no effect on the permission from the state.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Thank you all for those very insightful questions and comments. They are greatly appreciated in this process. We will be meeting as a board in a workshop, a traditional workshop, October 10th. What that is the board will discuss amongst itself. You know how I run things. I like to have questions. I like we talk with each other. The workshop is meant for the board, and you can listen in as we have our conversation. We won't be fielding questions. That's just not how a workshop is meant to be a public meeting where we work, do our work, and offer comment. We do not vote. We do not render a decision in a workshop. It's a way for us to exchange ideas. And then the meeting in October is my intent to have a resolution, one way or the other, for the board to vote, yea or nay. If it carries, then the time frame, which I believe is 45 days thereafter, would be a bond vote for the community. And that would be the conclusion of the process. At the close of this, we also have people who are not here. We have a direct job form that you can write directly to us. If you had other ideas, comments, feel free to send them in. We all get it at the same time, all the board members and Gordon. So if you have other thoughts or comments, you're welcome to send them in. We will all have seen them before October 10th, and we appreciate your input in this process. I hope we have been as transparent as possible and give you as much information as possible, because in the end, it's your house, it's your tax bill. This is your school, this is your community, it's your decision. All right. Let's move on to our regular business. If you'd like to stay, otherwise we'll take your picture and see that you'll leave early. Carrie, can we move on to personnel?
Personnel A, abolish position, resolve upon recommendation of the superintendent of the Board of Education hereby abolishes a point or speech teacher position and further terms part-time speech teacher effective October 4th, 2018.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? B, Ed, rescind appointment.
Rescind appointment. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby rescinds the motion appointing Jose Guzman as to a custodial appointment.
May I have a, thank you, Lynn. Any comments? All in favor? Lynn, resignation, A's.
Resignation A's. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby accepts the following resignations as listed.
May I have a second? Second. Thank you, Pete. Any comments? All in favor? Anne Marie. Substitute teachers.
Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following substitute teachers
As listed.
as listed.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments? All in favor? Number 2, Steve, substitute teacher, Spanish.
Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointment. Donna Pearson, from August 29th, 2018 through November 16th, 2018, as a substitute teacher in Spanish at a compensation rate of $500 per day.
May I have a second? Second. Thank you, Anne Marie. Any comments? All in favor?
Maureen, did I have your response?
E, appointments, non-instructional custodial worker, Pete.
The appointments, custodial worker 1, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following custodial appointment. Ryan Trotman, custodial worker 1, October 1st, 2018, step 1.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Gary, would you do substitute custodians?
Substitute custodian. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following custodial substitutes as listed.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Substitute aides, Lynn?
Substitute aides. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following substitute aide as listed.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Karen. Any comments? All in favor? Anne Marie, High School Club and Advisors.
Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby authorizes the following high school co-curricular clubs and appoint the persons listed below as advisors for the 2018-19 school year.
Second.
Thank you, Lynn. Any comments? All in favor? Steve, Dean of Students.
Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointments for the 2018-19 school year as listed.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Number 3, Coach. Pete.
Number 3, coach, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following coaching appointments for the 2018-19 school year as listed.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lynn. Comments? I'll offer a quick comment. Scott Ray, among the other hats, is going to put on an all-purpose coach hat. If by chance there's a coach who is absent or dismissed from a game, you don't have to forfeit the game. Scott can step in. He has to be appointed to do that, and that's the reason why he's on.
In the 12 seconds that he has.
Yes, in the 12 extra seconds that he has. All in favor? Those my place. Action items, education. Carrie?
Committee on Special Education, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education has no objections to the following special education recommendations and approves the authorization for the funds to implement the special education programs and services consistent with such.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments? All in favor? Ed, impartial hearing officer.
Impartial hearing officer, resolved the Board of Education hereby appoints Lee Murphy, Esquire, as the impartial hearing officer for case number 516733 with an effective date of September 5th, 2018.
May I have a second?
Second.
Pete, any comments? All in favor? Lynn, action item, school tax levy.
Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby establishes the 2018-19 school district tax levy in the amount of $40,117,049.
Second. Steve? Thank you. Comments? I do always like to point out that this is why the budget process of the state of New York is broken. We proceed through the budget all the way through to May, vote on a budget, and the state does not get around to setting the tax rate. This is actually the tax rate that we would be at. It is months later. It would be wonderful if everything was lined up. We'd actually have an idea what we were getting, what we were spending, but that's what it is. All in favor? Public library tax levy. We have Anne Marie, you get the library?
Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby establishes the 2018-19 library tax levy in the amount of $1,828,539.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Comments? We have the pleasure of having 2 libraries that service our school district. Their budget appears on our budget. It's not our money, it's their decision. And this is prorated depending on who signs up for what school district, Port Jefferson or Council. All in favor? We got obsolete equipment.
Steve.
Steve, you got obsolete equipment
I'm going
tonight.
to read it all too, sir.
Yes, read it all, please.
Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby declares the following items as obsolete and further authorizes disposal as listed. That's quite a list.
May I have a second? Second. Thank you, Pete. Comments? We cleaned out basements. People do this every once in a while. This is a basement cleanup. All in favor? Questions? General questions? Questions on the agenda? Things you forgot about asking before? Mike? You don't have to come up to the mic this time.
First one is I'm happy that you cleaned out the basement.
Thank you.
Got tours of those and I was amazed when that stuff was there. Or wasn't there. That's that news. Second question is the tax revenue from the state that you just read. How much more was that?
Same.
It was the same?
Same.
It's our tax cap.
Other questions? Brad?
I've got a bunch.
Okay.
Can you give us some details on the abolition of the speech teacher position and the rescinding of the custodial appointment?
The
Speech teacher, based on last year's count for speech services, we thought we could do more with less, that there are openings in speech therapist schedules that could accommodate the other students. Although we're closely watching new students we didn't know about who went to the district recently in our elementary school, so we're watching that. But we believe that we're able to, we're doing all the schedules now, to accommodate those students without that half 0.4 position. We're watching it closely. The other person, the custodian, you're saying?
That's something, as a personnel matter, we can't go into. But you didn't work here, but we can't go into the detail.
Okay. For our current student enrollment versus what we were expecting during the budget process, has that gone up, down, stayed the same? And my question is because my son has noticed that the buses feel much more crowded this year, and he wanted to go home with a friend on his friend's bus, but he couldn't because the bus was filled to capacity. That's never happened before.
I would say the population is what we expected it to be. More throughout the district, more kids are using the buses. Generally, our district was famous for parents driving, and buses would arrive half to 3/4 full. I saw the same thing on opening day. Our buses are filled, but we're within capacity, right, Linda?
Yes.
I do find, as a parent who has kids now in the high school, as the weeks progress, the bus loses its coolness, and it may change. The population, if you go to BOCES, I don't know where they get their numbers from. Sorry, BOCES. But we were pretty close to what we had expected. I believe we thought coming into the end of the year, we were at 138. The kindergarten class was 135. We look at a little bit larger to accommodate that, but we've been pretty close in terms of what we predicted, give or take a few kids, which is typical of August, mid-August, that parents may move in, but we were pretty close in our estimate.
I was kind of just add a comment to that. It does seem like though our numbers are flattening out. I mean, it looks like the decrease from last year is only about 0.5% when we were seeing decreases of 2.5% or more. So I guess we'll have to wait and see if we are flattening out or not versus continuing to
K was
decline.
about the same number, 132, 134. But Bob mentioned a lot of things before with bond and taxes. We have to see what that trend might be after next year. And I think we've talked about that as well when the federal tax laws take place, to see if that does affect Mount Sinai. And initial kindergarten was mentioned tonight. When full day K came in, somehow we were thinking 120. We had 166. They came from everywhere. So it is slowing down, but we'll see. But it's not, right? It's not a surprise on the end when we're looking in 5 years like 1,900 kids. It sounds funny for us to say that, but
I do my own sort of anecdotal search. I look at the MLS listings for the houses for Mount Sinai. I look at all the freestanding homes and look at them as a group, and that has gone up. In last month when I last looked at it, there were 19 to 20 more homes for sale than I've seen in a while. So there is a trend and a tendency, so we'll have to see. As budget time comes around next spring, we'll get some information from BOCES, we'll make our own estimates, but we also use other tools to look at it, and if you're seeing that many more homes for sale, I look at 3 and 4 bedroom homes. I look at that and say, that has the opportunity for families to move into our district. How would that affect us? It's anecdotal, but that's what I use. Any other questions? Yes.
For the substitute Spanish teacher,
How did you arrive at $500 a day for the compensation?
There are very few, it's temporary, it's a leave replacement, so it's a temporary placement. She is an AP certified Spanish teacher, which frankly, there aren't any out there for us, and it's either not off for AP Spanish and the other certifications that were necessary. So that's what we had to do. That was, it's the demand, the supply and demand, that's what was out there. She was a teacher here, so we were lucky to get someone who wants to teach for that short period of time.
We were surprised. We had a hire teacher, and it happened, I've seen it happen numerous times in my experience, where districts are desperate for a certain subject area. Spanish is one, demand everywhere, and she told us the second week in August she was leaving. Took another job in another district.
So we were short, we were quarterless of short. Yes, hi.
Hi, I'm actually here in response to something that I watched the last meeting on Facebook. Not to switch gears, because I know the bond stuff is only important, and haven't been to a bond thing like this before, and I do think I didn't realize the amount of work that goes into it. So thank you to everyone who did that.
Thank you.
What brought me here specifically tonight was the last meeting that I watched. The subject of special ed came up, and you talked a lot about how you were open to having parents come and give feedback and have some sort of open conversation. Yep. I loved hearing that. I have two in 4th grade. One is gen ed, one is special ed. And at least in my experience, since I've been in the district, there hasn't been a lot of meaningful conversation about what we do right, some things we do right, and some things that we can certainly improve on. So I took it as an invitation to come and say I'm definitely open for that. I think there needs to be more discussion, constructive.
The idea behind it was to have a good conversation, not individual students, not anyone in particular, but a general discussion about how to do things better. As a board, we're scheduling our month of October. We're looking at October 10th for our bond workshop. We're looking to get at the end of October, I think after October 24th, is that correct? A date that if that works, we may announce that. If it gets pushed into the first week in November, that's the goal that we're trying to have, an evening forum where we can have a discussion looking at different things. How can we do better from the parents' point of view? If you saw how we did this tonight, I get a great deal of information, my colleagues do, out of the dialogue that comes from the floor. It's very, whether you agree or disagree with it, it's very positive. And that's what our plan is. So an invitation will go out and a notice will go up on the website. Our goal is sometime after the 24th, either that week or the first week in November. I would like to try the week after the 24th. Yes?
And I would just like to echo what my good friend Stephanie said. My name is Suzanne Ricciero. I have 4 children in district, a 9th grader, 2 7th graders, and a 4th grader. My 7th grade son is also in the special education program. Also seeing the Board of Ed meeting last month addressing your desire to really hear more from the special education community. And really just to echo what Stephanie said, that we would really like to be able to partner with you to understand the many great things that we've experienced, some of the frustrations we've experienced, and just really to show you another face at a Board of Ed meeting from the special education community. So.
Yep. Anything else? Brad?
The school calendar seemed like it was very late this year. Is that something that the district puts out, or is that one of the school-based organizations?
We take donations to keep that hard copy alive. We have it posted electronically prior to that, but we have to solicit those donations. And the board has looked to go to electronic, like many districts have. So you may not be getting that hard copy next year. We'll have to see how the board feels, but I basically beg for money every year to keep that alive. Even after those donations, we have to contribute on the district end, mailing and more cost to make that thing happen. So I'm grateful that it is alive and out there, and we tried to get it out as quickly as we could when I got the money.
Okay, that is something that the physical version of that is something that my household places a great deal of value on. And there's a lot of people that I think were questioning where it was, like, where's my calendar? I need this to plan my first month of school. I'm gonna go bananas if I don't have it. So as feedback to the board, I think that's something that's for the time being anyway, is worth continuing to create in a physical form.
But it was on the website. The whole, with all the pictures and everything else, it was on the website, and you could print out if you needed to, you know, September, October.
It was on the website, but it was on the website very late, like a day or so before school started. It did not get put up early, and a lot of people were concerned and didn't know when back to school nights are. I mean, that's the big September planning, is the back to school night. And no one knew.
I think we could do better
You can do
at
better.
getting it out earlier.
At least for
Even the electronic version.
At least for September, at least for those big back to school nights,
Yeah.
because those are nights that multiple nights and multiple times, and those are nights that parents need to be available as planned. And there's some years they're 2-3 days into the school year. You know, this year
Right.
they were a bit, you know, the second week or so, but sometimes it's that first week, and some
Well,
people
we
don't.
take the great heart that Brad has recommended we print this and have it distributed, because he is our moral compass with regards to the environment. But we will look at, getting the electronic version up and on much quicker, and we will send Gordon out begging earlier so that it can be paid for sooner. Thank you all this evening. May I have a motion? Oh, you got one more. Sorry.
Just one more, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
My name's Keith Dronchild. I live
Yes, we met,
adjacent to the
previously.
school. I just wanted to inform the board, I was presented with a letter, both myself and my mother, who couldn't be here tonight. Both of our properties are next to the school. We were asked to sign it to aid the school district in installation of the fence, the new fencing that they're doing. I just wanted to let you know that both of us signed it, passed it along to Mr. Scott Wright, so he has that paperwork. The other thing I'd like to ask you about, I know that this is just proposed on the bond, going back to the bond, but as I've mentioned in the past, I see a line item here that says demolition of old original barn. Now, I have expressed interest in taking that barn and moving it to my property, if that's possible. So I would like to go ahead, and I know this is all preliminary, and actually contact the company to see what it would entail, but I need permission, access to
The barn is on the additional scope, but I remember that.
Yes.
You were at a prior meeting, and I know Scott is aware of that. I wouldn't, that's up to you if you want to look into it, but we're not up to that point.
We're pretty far away
I know.
from making a decision to demolish.
I just wanted to, you know,
But
mention.
we're very well aware of your offer.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all. May I have a motion to adjourn for the
So
evening?
moved.
Second, all in favor? Thank you for the hearty souls who stayed to the end, we do appreciate that.